The Foundational Truths of Sleep, an integrated first principles synthesis vast body of literature on sleep, encompassing molecular neuroscience, clinical sleep medicine, and behavioral self-help, converges on for irreducible foundational truths. These principles, which serve as the common bedrock for all successful sleep strategies and scientific understanding, are derived from the necessity, mechanism, function, and solution of human rest. 1. The principle of biological imperative, sleep as non-negotiable life support. The most fundamental truth is that sleep is not a passive or optional luxury, but the active primary state for all system maintenance and survival. It is the foundational pillar upon which wakeful cognitive and physiological health is built. Every book in this conglomerate, from Why We Sleep to the Practical Guides, begins with this premise. The global health toll of sleep deprivation, chronic sleep restriction, is defined not merely as a state of fatigue, but as one of systemic physiological deterioration. The literature consistently highlights the following global health consequences when this imperative is ignored: immune system suppression. Sleep loss diminishes the production and efficacy of T cells and natural killer NK cells, the critical components of the body's defensive response. Inversely, adequate sleep immediately following vaccination has been shown to enhance the long-term antibody response, cardiovascular risk. Sleep restriction leads to elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol and increased sympathetic nervous system activity. This contributes directly to chronic high blood pressure, endothelial damage, and an increased risk of heart attack and stroke. Metabolic dysregulation. Insufficient sleep profoundly alters the balance of appetite-regulating hormones. It increases ghrelin, the hunger-stimulating hormone, and decreases leptin, the satiety-signaling hormone. This, coupled with reduced glucose tolerance and elevated insulin resistance, establishes a direct causal link between sleep loss and the risk of developing type 2 diabetes and obesity. The essential role of glymphatic clearance. Critical neuroscientific function confirmed by modern imaging, which underscores the biological imperative, is the glymphatic system clearance. This process, which dramatically ramps up during deep non-REM sleep, is the brain's waste disposal mechanism. During NEM, glial cells, specifically astrocytes, shrink, creating space for cerebrospinal fluid to flush metabolic waste products, including the toxic protein beta amyloid, which is strongly implicated in the pathology of Alzheimer's disease. Sleep, therefore, is the brain's necessary state of detoxification. 2. The principle of dual process regulation, the mechanism of timing and pressure. Optimal human sleep is governed by the synchronized interaction of two independent yet essential biological forces. All effective strategies for improving sleep from infancy to adulthood are ultimately designed to align and strengthen this dual process model. Process S, homeostatic sleep pressure ethos, is the accumulated need for sleep that builds relentlessly the longer an organism is awake. The adenosine mechanism. The primary chemical driver of process S is adenosine, a neuromodulator that is a byproduct of cellular energy use, ATP. As adenosine levels rise in the brain, it binds to specific receptors, progressively inhibiting wake, promoting neurons, and generating the feeling of sleepiness. The caffeine intervention. Caffeine is an effective stimulant because it acts as an adenosine receptor antagonist, temporarily blocking adenosine from binding to its receptors. It does not eliminate the sleep pressure. It merely masks it, leading to the caffeine crash when the drug wears off and the accumulated pressure floods the receptors. The role of NEM. Process S is predominantly relieved by non-REM NEM, slow-wave sleep, deep sleep. The duration and intensity of NEM are directly proportional to the amount of preceding wakefulness. Process C. The circadian rhythm. This is the internal master clock that dictates the optimal timing of the sleep-wake cycle. Operating on a roughly 24-hour cycle, the term circadian meaning about a day. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, CCN, the CCN, located in the hypothalamus, is the primary biological clock. It orchestrates the release of hormones and controls body temperature fluctuations. Melatonin signal. The CCN regulates the release of the hormone melatonin from the pineal gland. Melatonin does not force sleep. It acts as the darkness signal that communicates to the body that it is time for rest. thereby lowering the biological threshold required to initiate sleep. Its production is sharply suppressed by light, particularly blue light. Underscoring the importance of environmental control, chronotypes, the slight individual variations in process C are known as chronotypes. For example, larks or morning types vs owls or evening types. Optimal performance and mood are achieved when an individual's work or social schedule aligns with their natural chronotype, the synthesis. Restorative sleep is secured only when the high sleep pressure as accumulated over the day aligns perfectly with the biological nighttime signal C. Insomnia often arises from the desynchronization of these two processes. 3. The principle of cognitive and emotional recalibration, the brain's dual state function. The sleeping brain is not idle. It is engaged in an essential dual-phase process of memory consolidation, skill acquisition, and emotional regulation. The two main stages of sleep serve profoundly different yet complementary functions. The memory and learning exist. The literature, particularly from Zadra, Stickgold, and Lewis, details how sleep is the primary state for learning, not just the consequence of learning. NEM deep sleep for factual and motor skills. This phase is crucial for consolidation of explicit fact-based and motor procedural memories. During NEM, sleep spindles, bursts of brain activity and slow waves interact to rapidly reactivate and shuttle new information from the hippocampus, the brain's temporary memory repository, to the prefrontal cortex for permanent storage. REM sleep for integration and synthesis. This phase excels at connecting disparate information and extracting general rules and abstract knowledge from raw data. REM sleep is where creativity and problem solving are enhanced. As the brain synthesizes information across different domains, the emotional therapy axis, the role of dreaming. REM sleep, the phase where vivid dreaming is most likely, serves as the brain's essential overnight emotional therapy session, processing without arousal. During REM sleep, the brain is highly active, but the key stress hormone noradrenaline is virtually shut down. This allows the brain to reprocess and integrate emotionally charged memories from the day, for example, fear, anxiety, trauma, while stripping away the raw, visceral emotional intensity. The amygdala's role. The amygdala, the brain's fear and emotion center, is highly active during REM by processing emotional content in a low noradrenaline state. The brain effectively tames the memory's emotional sting, leading to emotional resilience and psychological stability upon waking. Dreaming as emergent function. Dreaming is an emergent, subjective experience of this essential emotional and cognitive reprocessing. The mystery of dreams is being systematically demystified as a necessary function of adaptive memory and emotional regulation. For the principle of behavioral consistency, the CBT-I first solution. The collective wisdom of the practical guides Winter, Jacobs, Wu, and Arakan is an unequivocal endorsement of the cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia CBT-I framework as the first line, drug-free and most durable solution for chronic sleep problems across all age groups, modified for pediatric use. This principle asserts that healthy sleep is an earned state, secured by respecting the biological mechanisms through consistent behavior and environmental control. The irreducible elements of CBT-I. The success of CBT-I, which is reflected in the prescriptive advice across all practical books, rests on 4 core techniques. Sleep restriction cert, counterintuitively. This involves temporarily limiting the time in bed tib to match the actual amount of time slept. This practice intentionally builds a stronger homeostatic sleep pressure process S, leading to rapid sleep onset and consolidated higher quality rest, thereby breaking the cycle of frustration associated with spending long, wakeful periods in bed. Stimulus control SC. This breaks the negative association between the bed or bedroom and states of wakeful arousal, worry, frustration, anxiety. The rule is absolute. The bed is for sleep and intimacy only. If wakeful for more than 20 minutes, the individual must leave the bed and the bedroom to engage in a quiet, non-stimulating activity until sleepiness returns, thus reinforcing the bed as the signal for sleep. Sleep hygiene SH. This focuses on optimizing the external environment and daily behaviors to support the dual process mechanism. Light exposure. maximizing bright light in the morning to stabilize the circadian rhythm C and rigorously limiting blue light exposure from screens in the 2 hours before bed. Temperature. Ensuring a cool bedroom temperature 60-67 F or 15-19 C, as the body must drop its core temperature to initiate and maintain sleep chemical intake. Strategically timing or eliminating caffeine due to its long half-life and alcohol, which fragments NREM and suppresses REM sleep. Mind-body connection, relaxation, and yoga. Techniques like yoga for better sleep or simple mindfulness and progressive muscle relaxation are used to counteract hyperarousal, the cognitive racing and physiological stress response that keeps the body awake even when tired. This addresses the psychological barrier to sleep. Pediatric and life stage application. The principles remain consistent even for specific audiences. Infant-child sleep. The methods in healthy sleep habits. Happy child and the happy sleeper are simply CBT-I adapted for development. They focus on establishing consistent routines. Process C, allowing the child to develop the skill of self-soothing by honoring the biological need for sleep. Pressure. Process S, to build naturally and ensuring a safe, consistent environment. SH, entrepreneurial success. Stevenson. The advice to sleep smarter frames these biological principles as performance enhancers. Consistent, high-quality sleep is recast as the ultimate productivity tool because it optimizes the brain's ability for decision-making, emotional intelligence, and memory recall. Directly linking the biological imperative principle 1 to career success. In conclusion, the entire library of sleep knowledge collapses into these 4 unified principles. Sleep is mandatory for survival. It is timed by 2 interlocking biological clocks. It functions as the brain's unique consolidation and emotional therapy state, and it is mastered through consistent science-backed behavioral modification. CBT-I Part I, the principle of biological imperative, molecular and systemic health. Foundational principle that sleep is non-negotiable. Life support is rooted in molecular biology and observed through its systemic effects on the entire human organism. This section delves into the neurochemistry and physiological consequences of this imperative. 1. The neurochemistry of wakefulness and sleep. Transition between wakefulness and sleep is governed by a finely tuned antagonistic system often called the sleep-wake flip-flop switch, located primarily in the brainstem and hypothalamus. This switch ensures that we are in one state or the other, preventing the fragmented, mixed state characteristic of certain sleep disorders. Wake-promoting systems. The on switch. Wakefulness is maintained by the activity of several nuclei that release key alerting neurotransmitters, monoamines, norepinephrine, serotonin, histamine. These are released from the locus coeruleus LC, dorsal raphe nucleide RINE, and tuberomammillary nucleus TM, respectively. They depolarize excite for brain neurons, leading to increased vigilance and alertness. Most antidepressant medications SNRIs modulate these systems, which is why they often impact sleep architecture. Orexin hypocretin, produced by a small population of neurons in the lateral hypothalamus. Orexin is the master stabilizing agent for wakefulness. It is essential for holding the wake state by stimulating the monomenergic centers. The near-complete loss of orexin neurons is the primary pathological cause of narcolepsy type 1, leading to sudden, uncontrollable transitions into REM sleep cataplexy because the wake switch can't be stabilized. Acetylcholine released from the pons and basal forebrain. ACH activity is high during both wakefulness and REM sleep. It is critical for cortical activation and memory encoding. Sleep-promoting systems. The off switch. The primary agent that actively promotes and initiates sleep is the GABAergic system. Velpo-ventrolateral preoptic nucleus, located in the hypothalamus. The velpo is the sleep-promoting center. Its neurons release the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, and galanin. When active, the velpo projects to and simultaneously inhibits all the major wake-promoting nuclei LC, DRINE, TM, the switch mechanism, as adenosine process S builds during the day. It increasingly inhibits the wake-promoting centers, shifting the balance of the flip-flop switch toward the velpo, leading to the rapid onset of sleep. Conversely, the wake-promoting centers inhibit the velpo during the day, maintaining wakefulness. 1. To the systemic health consequences, immunity, metabolism. And longevity literature consistently elevates sleep from a brain function to a full-body biological imperative. The profound molecular impact of sleep deprivation solidifies this principle: the immune system and inflammatory cascade. Sleep acts as the immune system's essential logistical hub, cytokine regulation during deep sleep. The body strategically increases the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, for example, IL-6, TNF. While sounding negative, this is part of the essential process of preparing an immune response and managing pathogens. Chronic sleep loss, however, leads to a chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation, a state where cytokine levels remain pathologically elevated during the day. This sustained inflammation is a recognized risk factor for numerous chronic diseases, including Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease. Vaccine efficacy. Studies have demonstrated that insufficient sleep in the days surrounding a vaccination significantly impairs the long-term production of antibodies. This directly shows that sleep is required for the immune system to consolidate immunological memory, metabolic disruption, and endocrine chaos. The strong correlation between sleep restriction and metabolic disorders is chemically mediated. Appetite hormones. Sleep deprivation directly affects the hypothalamus's regulation of energy balance. Leptin, the hormone signaling satiety fullness, decreases. Ghrelin, the hormone signaling hunger, increases. This shift drives overconsumption, often of high-calorie, simple carbohydrate foods, to satisfy the brain's tired state. Insulin sensitivity. Even one night of insufficient sleep can cause a systemic reduction in insulin sensitivity, mimicking a pre-diabetic state. This forces the pancreas to pump out excessive insulin to manage blood glucose, leading to systemic stress and fat deposition, cardiovascular and oncological risks. The sympathetic nervous system (SNS) is meant to be downregulated during sleep. Hypertension and heart rate variability (HRV). Sleep deprivation prevents the necessary nocturnal dip in blood pressure. The sustained activity of the SNS elevates heart rate and constricts blood vessels, leading to chronic hypertension and poor heart rate variability. A strong predictor of cardiovascular risk, cancer, and DNA repair. Sleep is essential for DNA repair. During deep sleep, cellular machinery is dedicated to correcting errors accumulated during the day. Furthermore, the nocturnal release of melatonin acts as a powerful antioxidant. By disrupting these mechanisms, chronic sleep deprivation is associated with increased risk for various cancers, reinforcing its role as a key longevity factor. Part 2. The principle of dual process regulation, chronobiology and ultradian rhythms. The principle of dual process regulation is the mechanistic explanation of when and how intensely we sleep. A deep dive requires understanding the molecular clock and the cyclical nature of the sleep stages themselves. 2. 1. The molecular clock. Unpacking process. See the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is governed by a self-sustaining feedback loop of gene expression found in nearly every cell in the body, but centrally governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus (CCN) clock genes. The core loop involves the clock circadian locomotor output cycles caput and BMAL1 brain and muscle aren't like one proteins, which heterodimerize and activate the transcription of the period PER and cryptochrome Cry genes. Feedback loop. As the PER and Cry proteins accumulate in the cytoplasm, they eventually translocate back into the nucleus and inhibit the clock BMAL1 complex, shutting down their own transcription. The PER and Cry proteins eventually degrade, releasing the inhibition and starting the cycle again, a process that takes approximately 24 hours. Entrainment. The Zeitgeber. While the CCN clock is endogenous, it is not precisely 24 hours and must be regularly reset by external cues, called Zeitgebers, German for time givers. The most powerful Zeitgeber is light, which is sensed by specialized photoreceptors in the eye called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cell Zeitgebers, which contain the photopigment melanopsin. These cells project directly to the CCN to synchronize the molecular clock with the external world. 2. Process S. Homeostatic pressure and the dynamics of sleep stages. The intensity of sleep process S is expressed through the shifting pattern of sleep stages, known as the ultradian rhythm, cycles shorter than 24 hours, which repeats roughly every 90 minutes. The sleep stages and their defining features. A typical night consists of 4-6 cycles, each dominated by a transition through NEM stages and culminating in a period of REM sleep. Stage waveform activate a dominant function temporal pattern N1 light sleep theta wave S transition. Muscle relaxation brief. First 5-10 minutes of cycle. N2 true sleep spindles. K complexes inhibit sensory processing. Memory consolidation largest portion of total sleep time 45-55. N3 deep or subluS delta waves physical restoration. Growth hormone release. Glymphatic clearance dominates the first third of the night. REM rapid eye movement low amplitude. High frequency like wakefulness, emotional processing, creative problem solving, dreaming. Muscle atonia paralysis dominates the latter third of the night. Export 2 sheets. Part 3. The principle of cognitive and emotional recalibration. Memory and dreams. The brain's dedicated work during sleep is far more complex than simple rest. It is a mandatory two-phase process of curating, consolidating, and emotionally processing the day's experiences, supporting the philosophical view that sleep is the primary state of learning and mental health. 3.1. The multi-stage memory consolidation model. Memory consolidation is a highly selective and hierarchical process distributed across both NEM and REM sleep. NEM, the hippocampal to cortical dialogue. Primary function of NEM, especially subUS, is system consolidation, the transfer of explicit memories from the hippocampus temporary storage to the prefrontal cortex FAC long-term. Semantic storage. The triple wave coincidence. This process is mediated by the precise timing of 3 brain oscillations, slow waves generated by the cortex, creating periods of synchronous neuronal silence and firing. Thalamocortical spindles. Brief bursts of 12-15 HJ activity generated in the thalamus, which synchronize the cortical areas. Hippocampal ripples. Extremely fast oscillations 1/0200 HJ that represent the repeated compressed firing of neuronal assemblies that encoded the memory during the day. Replay and transfer. The ripples, the memory content, occur during the troughs of the slow waves, precisely at the same time as the spindles. This synchronized firing is theorized to be the mechanism by which memories are replayed, stabilized, and transferred out of the hippocampus, freeing it up for new learning the next day. A lack of NEM directly correlates with impaired retention of fact-based learning. REM. Synthesis and generalization. REM sleep performs integrative consolidation and emotional regulation, creative problem solving. When subjects are tasked with a difficult problem, for example, finding a hidden rule and given REM-rich sleep, they are 3 times more likely to gain the aha insight compared to NEM sleep or wakefulness. The low noradrenaline, highly associative state of REM allows the brain to make novel, non-obvious connections between memories acquired at different times, facilitating creativity and generalization. Synaptic homeostasis hypothesis shy. Some theories suggest a dual function, while NEM selectively strengthens relevant synapses. REM may act to downscale or weaken the non-essential ones, maintaining an efficient learning capacity without overloading the neural network. 3.2 Dreaming as emotional recalibration depotentiation. The books on dreaming Zadra Stick Gold, The Nocturnal Brain focus on the essential therapeutic role of the dream state, the neurobiological basis of dream therapy. REM sleep is characterized by a paradoxical state. The cortex is highly active, but the brainstem releases virtually no noradrenaline, the primary chemical of stress and arousal. The amygdala and emotion. The amygdala, the emotion center, is hyperactive during REM sleep. By reactivating emotionally significant memories in a chemically calm environment, low noradrenaline, the brain is able to re-encode the memory's narrative while simultaneously depotentiating its emotional charge. Taming trauma. This explains the function of sleep in trauma and stress. The brain processes the story of a traumatic event without re-experiencing the full terror, allowing the memory to be recalled the next day with less fear and intensity. This is the ultimate mechanism of emotional resilience conferred by sleep. Part 4. The principle of behavioral consistency. The clinical power of CBT-I. Final unifying principle of the practical sleep literature is the endorsement of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBT-I as the gold standard. This principle transforms the neurobiological knowledge into a structured, highly effective, drug-free intervention For one, the core mechanisms of CBT-I is not a collection of sleep hygiene tips. It is a targeted treatment that directly manipulates the two sleep regulating processes S&C and corrects the cognitive misinterpretations that fuel chronic insomnia mechanism. 1. Sleep restriction therapy CERT goal, to artificially induce a mild temporary sleep deprivation to maximize process S homeostatic sleep pressure. Method. The patient is instructed to severely limit their time in bed tib to match their actual total sleep time TST, based on a sleep diary. For example, if a patient is in bed for 8 hours but only sleeps 5, TIB is temporarily restricted to 5.5 hours. Outcome. This maximizes sleep efficiency and ensures that the time spent in bed is consolidated and restorative. Once sleep efficiency TST or TIB reaches an agreed upon threshold, for example, 85%, TIB is gradually increased by 15-20 minutes. This directly breaks the long-standing fragmented sleep pattern. Mechanism 2. Stimulus control therapy SC goal, to break the learned negative association between the bed or bedroom and the state of wakeful frustration arousal. Method. Patients are instructed to go to bed only when sleepy, if unable to fall asleep after 20 minutes or if they wake up and can't return to sleep. They must leave the bedroom and go to another room. They must engage in a quiet, non-stimulating activity, for example, reading a physical book, listening to soft music until they feel sleepy again, at which point they return to bed. They must maintain a consistent wake-up time, regardless of how much sleep they achieved. This anchors process C outcome. The bed is quickly reconditioned to be a strong, reliable signal for rapid sleep onset, overriding years of learned frustration. 4. 2. Beyond insomnia. Chronotherapy and life stage application. The principles of behavioral consistency extend to managing specific chronobiological disorders and life stages. Chronotherapy for circadian rhythm disorders. For conditions like delayed sleep phase syndrome DSD, common in adolescents and night owls, or advanced sleep phase syndrome MASPs, seen in some elderly individuals, CBT-I is augmented with chronotherapy. DSD management involves strategically timed bright light exposure immediately upon waking to push the clock forward and rigorous blue light avoidance in the evening to prevent the clock from drifting later. ASP's management involves strategically timed evening light exposure to delay the onset of melatonin release. Pediatric sleep consistency, the core of healthy sleep habits. Happy Child and the Happy Sleeper is applying the dual process and behavioral consistency principles to development. Consistent bedtime routine. This establishes a powerful, predictable environmental Zeitgeber time giver to entrain the young child's less stable process C self-soothing and schedule, ensuring the child develops the capacity to fall asleep independently, often through controlled comforting methods. Requires honoring process S. The child must have sufficient sleep pressure and not rely on external stimuli to initiate the sleep state, which leads to fragmented sleep when they naturally cycle through stages. 4. 3. Integrating the mind-body connection. The books that address the role of physical activity. Sleep Smarter. Yoga for Better Sleep emphasize that systemic and behavioral consistency extends into the physical body. Exercise timing, regular, moderate to vigorous exercise is a powerful promoter of deep NEM sleep, likely due to increased metabolism and core body temperature fluctuations. However, exercise must be timed correctly, avoiding high-intensity activity too close to bedtime to allow core body temperature to drop, which is a prerequisite for initiating sleep. Yoga and relaxation. Techniques like yoga and meditation directly target the hyperarousal that is the final common pathway for insomnia. By down-regulating the sympathetic nervous system and activating the parasympathetic rest and digest system, they bridge the gap between wakefulness high arousal and sleep onset low arousal, addressing the cognitive component of the disorder. Conclusion. The unified theory of sleep, the entire conglomerate of literature, from cutting-edge neuroscience to 7-day prescription plans, is built upon a unified, self-reinforcing theoretical structure. Sleep is not a mystery. It is a mandatory two-component biological process that dictates the ultimate state of physical and mental health. Success in achieving restorative sleep is not found in a pill, but in the disciplined alignment of behavior and environment with the body's ancient, non-negotiable molecular and circadian mechanisms.